The mic on. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Constance Walter. I'm the Communications Director at the Sanford Underground Research Facility and at the South Dakota Science and Technology Authority, which manages SURF. I'm really excited to have all of you here. And on behalf of Mike Headley and the SDSTA, I'm going to make some remarks. We're here today to dedicate SURF as an American Physical Society APS historic site. We are standing in the Davis Cavern right now, and this is where Ray Davis's experiment was located. It was a lot different back then. It was just a great big cavern. And so it was also the place where new discoveries were made, and with this very pioneering research, which informed physics experiments for years to come. Even in today's world, people are looking for that. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us as we recognize and celebrate the Nobel Prize winning work of Dr. Raymond Davis, Dr. John Bacall, who developed the theory behind Ray's work, and the many scientists, engineers, and crew members who created this laboratory space. Their work allowed Dr. Davis to operate his solar neutrino experiment for more than 3 decades in the Homestake Mine. You're going to hear a lot more about from our other speakers, and they'll talk about the leading roles Dr. Davis and Dr. Bacall's work played in establishing much of what we know about neutrinos today. Today, we celebrate the historic achievements realized in this facility, as well as the scientific legacy that SURF continues to advance in a wide range of science disciplines. This was not planned very well, I'm afraid. One of the leading dark matter experiments in the world, the Lux Zeppelin, or LZ experiment, is operating right here in the Davis Cavern and has just completed its initial data-taking run. With LZ, scientists hope to begin to understand the makeup of approximately 85% of all the matter in the universe. And that has only ever been seen indirectly, but provides the mass or glue holding the universe together. That's the layperson's term for what dark matter does. Scientists will tell you something very different. Also located about 1 kilometer to the west of our location on the 4850-foot level is a project led by Fermilab in partnership with more than 1,400 collaborators from more than 200 institutions in 30 countries. This project, the Long Baseline Neutrino Facility, requires the excavation of more than 800,000 tons of rock at SURF to create caverns for the deep underground neutrino experiment. Dune will push the limits of our understanding of neutrinos and the origins of the universe, and it will help us understand why we are here in a matter-dominated universe. Scientists at SURF are advancing science research today because of the trail blazed by Drs. Ray Davis and John Bacall in this historic location. The South Dakota Science and Technology Authority Board of Directors and our staff are incredibly proud to have the opportunity to continue the legacy of the work done by Dr. Ray Davis and Dr. John Bacall. I should have thought this out a little more carefully. Now, before introducing our 3 speakers, I'd like to recognize a few people whose efforts have directly contributed to our being here today. First, I want to thank Dr. Ed Kearns from Boston University for recommending that SURF, and especially the Davis Cavern, be recognized by the APS as a historic site. Ed was not able to be with us today in person, but I believe he is watching us live through Vimeo. Thank you, Ed, for recommending the Davis Cavern for this honor. Also, we are honored to have 10 members of Dr. Ray Davis's family with us today. Andrew Davis and Susan Nemori, Martha and Roger Kumler, Nancy and George Clem, Roger and Linda Davis, and Alan and Ann Davis. Welcome, all of you. We also want to extend our greetings to Anna Davis, the widow of Ray Davis. Anna was not able to travel to SURF for this event, but we know or hope that she is watching us online as a way to take part in this historic event. Also this month, I want to tell you, on May 20th, we are celebrating 10 years of the Davis campus operations. Anna was here for that dedication about 10 years ago, and I believe she brought a copy of Dr. Ray Davis's Nobel Prize medal with her to commemorate the event, and we have photos of that event, and it was really, really an exciting time. I also want to recognize Mr. T. Denny Sanford and Senator Mike Rounds for their incredible support and sponsorship in helping us realize the vision for a deep underground science research facility in the United States. Finally, I want to recognize Barrick Gold Corporation for donating the former Homestake Gold Mine to become a dedicated research facility and for continuing to be a tremendous partner over the years. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Jonathon Bagger, the CEO of the American Physical Society. Please help me welcome him. Thank you.
Well, so thank you, Connie, and greetings to the Davis family, both here and online. I'm Jonathon Bagger. I'm CEO of the American Physical Society, and I'm really delighted to be here today with Phil Bucksbaum, who was APS President in 2020 when SURF was selected as an APS historic site. So APS is one of the world's largest organizations of physicists with some 50,000 members spread across universities, labs, and industry. We're brought together by a shared interest in our mission, which is to advance and diffuse the knowledge of physics for the benefit of all, a task that is accomplished spectacularly by this laboratory. In 2005, the APS Committee on Historic Sites was formed to recognize places of interest, places of historical importance to the physics community. By designating such sites, APS honors scientific accomplishments and celebrates the people and the places that have shaped the direction of our field. The Committee on Historic Sites consists of 6 experts in the history of physics. After soliciting nominations from the community, they select only a few places each year to designate as historic sites. So we are very grateful to the 2020 committee that was chaired by Diana Buchwald of Caltech for the work that led to us being here today. From a very competitive pool of 25 nominations, the committee selected Sanford Underground Research Facility as one of 2 sites to recognize with this distinction. Now, before I turn the floor over to Phil, I would like to close with a personal comment. Before joining APS, I served 7 years as Director of TRIUMPH, Canada's Particle Accelerator Center in Vancouver. In Vancouver, I had the good fortune to meet Walter Segsworth, a retired mine safety engineer who had, in his previous life, served as the president of the Homestake Mining Company. Walter spoke movingly of this mine, certainly of its technology, but also of the people who worked here. He told me that his decision to close this mine was really one of the most wrenching decisions he had ever made. So Walter was absolutely delighted when I told him that the mine had been reborn as the Sanford Underground Research Facility. I can say that neither he nor I can think of a better way to honor the magnificent legacy of this very special place. And with that, I turn the program over to Phil, who will say a few more words about the history of this site and to present the plaque. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks for the introduction. You know, it's a pleasure to represent the APS on this day. In fact, it's really a deep honor for me. To designate the Sanford Underground Research Facility as a historic site, a rightful honor for the deepest underground research laboratory in the United States, and after all, the place where it was discovered that the sun shines because of nuclear fusion. This is really an inspiration to researchers around the world. Long before it was known for all of this wonderful research that's happening now, the Homestake gold mine, of course, was the site of Nobel laureate Ray Davis's solar neutrino project. And it's really a special honor, it's a thrill that the family of Ray is joining us today. In 1965, Ray, who was a chemist at Brookhaven National Lab, began building an experiment deep in the Homestake mine, just where we are now, with the goal of counting the neutrinos from the sun to test the theory that this is how the sun generates energy. He took extreme care with his research. He was really methodical with his observations. He had a 100,000-gallon tank filled with dry cleaning fluid, basically. Neutrinos from the sun, from solar fusion, turn the chlorine in that cleaner fluid into argon atoms at the rate of a few atoms out of 100,000 gallons per week. Ray spent 15 hours a day, sometimes underground, conducting research, and many times he didn't even see the sun, but he was known, and in fact it's a well-known thing around here now, that he quipped that he was watching the sun all the time when he was down here. His fascination with neutrinos began in 1948 when he read a review paper by H.R. Crane, and initially he conducted his research at Brookhaven's graphite research reactor at the Savannah River plant in South Carolina. During the 1950s, he built a pilot experiment, only 2,300 feet underground, in limestone, a limestone mine near Akron, Ohio. And in 1965, he came here. He went even deeper to this 4,850-foot level where we currently stand. Now, Ray's experiments weren't all sunshine and roses. In fact, there was a serious problem. Over 20 years of observations from when things started going around 1970 until the early 90s, he consistently detected only about 1/3 the number of neutrinos predicted by scientists. So we received a lot of pushback from our community. I remember as a graduate student in those days, some of that pushback. Basically, the community were convinced that the experimental method must be wrong because the solar model was so firm as a theory. But Ray stood firm, and he insisted that something had to be missing with that solar model. This discrepancy even had a name. It was called the solar neutrino problem. That was the problem created by Ray's experiment. Now, got to the 1990s, and finally other experiments came online in Japan and in Canada, and Ray was vindicated. Those experiments actually demonstrated that the neutrinos produced by solar fusion transform on their way to us into other kinds of neutrinos that can't produce the inverse reaction to make the argon atoms. So Ray had been measuring the electron neutrinos that survive production and passage to us, but not the others, and that was the reason for the discrepancy. These suggest new theories, which are now thought to be, getting to be well established today, that the neutrino can change its stripes, basically change its flavor, or even oscillate back and forth between being an electron neutrino and not at the speed of light as it comes, or nearly the speed of light as it comes towards us. Ray's work and his work of his collaborators were right after all. So solar neutrinos detected here, that measurement is remarkably accurate. And in 2002, of course, Ray shared the Nobel Prize for that work. His ingenious experiment, which was aided by John Bacall's theoretical model, Also, Willie Fowler, Maurice Goldhaber, and many engineers and crew members, has helped physicists to understand some of the most fundamental questions in our field. His legacy continues to serve as a motivation for the next generation of scientists and engineers. Now, I'd like to turn the microphone back to Constance.
I'm just going to do this like this. I'm really excited about having all of the Davis family members here, but we don't have time for everyone to speak, so they selected Andrew. I believe you're the oldest. He is the oldest child of Ray Davis, and he will make a few remarks for us, and then we'll do the unveiling.
Thank you. I'd like to first thank the American Physical Society for this great honor of naming this historical site after Ray Davis, and also the Sanford Underground Research Facility for their fantastic operation here and for being such great hosts during our visit. I thought I would say a little bit about what it was like to grow up with neutrinos. My father came to Brookhaven Lab in 1948 and immediately did two things. He became interested in neutrinos and he met my mother. They soon married, and he began working on an experiment to look at the decay of beryllium-7, which has a half-life of 50 days, and it gives off a monoenergetic neutrino, which he couldn't detect, but he could detect the recoil of the lithium that it turned into. So that was his first experiment. So I was born in 1950 when he was working on it. We're all old enough that we're not embarrassed about giving our birth years. Martha was born in 1952 when the first paper on the beryllium-7 decay came along. Nancy was born in 1954 when he began working on the first chlorine experiment using carbon tetrachloride. The first paper on that work was published in 1956 when Roger was born, and that was then in 1960 or 61, that was when the idea of doing a solar neutrino experiment really looked like it was possible, and there were some measurements of nuclear reactions that looked like you could actually do it with yes, a ridiculous amount of cleaning fluid, but not a stupendous amount. And then 1961, Alan was born. 1964 were the back-to-back papers of Bacall and Davis proposing the experiment and doing the first calculation of the predicted neutrino flux from the sun. Then you've all seen pictures of, first he went mine shopping, and fortunately for everyone here, Homestake won that, and it turned out to be Homestake turned out to be a fantastic host for the experiment. The first, so he built a tank in little pieces that came down in that same cage that we came down in. Then 1967 were the first results, and I found a letter he wrote to Willie Fowler, who was a Nobel Prize winner for measuring nuclear reaction rates, in which he had made his first measurement. He had not seen any neutrinos, and he had an upper limit for how many they were, and the upper limit was about 1/3 of what John Bacall predicted. And then as we were growing up, every 2 months he would get on an airplane and fly to South Dakota and go underground for a week. He'd have to go to Rapid City and get some liquid nitrogen. So we had lots of stories of visiting South Dakota. He did occasionally take a weekend off. I remember him talking about skiing in the Black Hills. But we grew up with him going off in these periodic trips all throughout the year. Both the nice time in the Black Hills and in the middle of winter where it's not nice unless you're a skier. Then of course it's already been described that it was sort of a lonely challenge against the physics community who were not really believers, but we, of course, in my family, were all complete believers because we knew what a careful guy he was. And he, of course, it turned out to be right. And He stuck to his guns. His upper limit became a number which was about the same as the upper limit. John Bacall also stuck to his guns, and his predictions stayed pretty much the same for, well, it's still correct today. And it turned out, of course, that the problem was with the neutrinos, not with the experiment or the model of the sun. Then, of course, it was a great surprise to all of us in 2002 when the phone call came from the Swedes. We were fortunate to all be able to go to the ceremony in Stockholm, along with all of the grandchildren at the time. I guess that's all the grandchildren. Now there are great-grandchildren. I kind of lose track. Anyway, I'd like to just close and thank the APS for this great honor, and we're delighted to be here, and especially many of us have not been down a mile underground before, so that's a big thrill too. So thank you very much, and here we are.
Okay, so we're going to be doing some unveiling, and I'd like to have the APS up here, APS folks, and Andrew, I'd like you to come over. I want to tell you a little bit about this, though, because everybody's going to be surprised when you see it. It's a pretty special thing. We decided to really go all out. And this will be on permanent display for everyone who works here and visits the Davis Cavern. I want to note that the metal mounting plate supporting the APS plaque was fabricated using steel from the large tank used in Dr. Davis's solar neutrino experiment. And we want to give a very special thank you to our infrastructure technician and phenomenal welder, Curtis Jones, who fabricated this piece. And so now we're going to move on to unveiling.
Okay, now we're going to unveil the plaque. Come around, everyone. I'd like to mention that later, I guess Constance and I will be signing SURF's entry in the APS Historic Sites Registry. That'll happen up at the surface, I guess, at the Visitors Center. So everybody, I hope will stick around for that. So without further ado, as president of the American Physical Society in the year 2020, it is my pleasure to present this plaque, which reads, from 1962 to 1994, Raymond Davis Jr. built and operated the first successful detector for solar neutrinos using John N. Bacall's theoretical model and working with William A. Fowler, Maurice Goldhaber, and numerous engineers and crew members on the 4850 level of the Homestake Mine, now the Davis campus at the Sanford Underground Research Facility. The result of Davis's observations, just 1/3 the theoretical expected flux, led to fundamental advances in particle physics and astrophysics. And for his work, Davis received a share of the 2002 Nobel Prize in Physics, along with Masatoshi Koshiba, for his research into the detection of cosmic neutrinos.
Okay, now, I do want to tell you this, it's taped back here because we didn't want this to fall off. So I'd like to have everybody help here. Andrew, we want you to help us get this unveiling done. So, all right, are we ready? We wanted to make it really special, right? It's not special.
I don't think the original tank was bronzed.
It wasn't.
It was painted white, actually, but
It
yeah.
wasn't. In fact, this was done
That's-
deliberately.
No, that's fantastic. It's,
Yeah.
maybe he should have done that.
Thank you.